Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this new episode of the Fox Experience. Stoked to get into this, but not so stoked about what's going on in the country. We have further restrictions and lockdowns being imposed around the nation in several cities. Going to focus on 6 of those cities and states today. I'm going to go through Michigan, Washington State, Washington, D.C., Chicago, New York, and California. Let you know what's going on there, and let you know about the double standards that are going on from our public officials that are not following their own mandates that they're putting into place for everybody else, and their excuses are out of this world. Can't wait to get into Andrew Cuomo, the awful governor of New York, and he's actually laid out a few more viruses that we're battling due to our weakened immune systems from COVID. Here we are, new COVID ridiculousness. Let's get right down to it. This episode is sponsored by Blazed Resin, a handmade resin art company that was started by a friend of mine, Diamond Chanel. She started customizing resin art as a hobby, and she's turned it into a business with amazing, very high-quality products. Check them out at blazedresin.com or on Instagram at blazedresin. That's B-L-A-Z-E-D resin, R-E-S-I-N. If you want some unique resin art that'll look great no matter where in your house you have it, look no further than Blazed Resin. They customize in stash boxes, ashtrays, trays, custom wine racks, and coasters that'll match whatever you'd like to pair them with. And right now, place an order on blazedresin.com and use the promo code BLAZED10 for $10 off. That's BLAZED10, and see what type of art your imagination can come up with. Blazed Resin, a handmade resin art company. So Gretchen Whitmer has resided over the state of Michigan, which has had one of the worst death rates in the entire nation per million throughout the pandemic. And Gretchen Whitmer is actually responsible for thousands of deaths within nursing homes because she was forcing, under executive order, nursing homes to take in patients whether they tested positive for COVID or not. So there were 20 and 30-year-olds in these nursing homes with COVID, with older people, resulting in thousands and thousands of deaths in Michigan, and it's currently being investigated. One thing you need to know about Gretchen Whitmer is that she is the epitome of Professor Umbridge from Harry Potter. If you haven't seen Harry Potter, just picture the worst human being that you can possibly think of, put a smile on them, and then make them as evil and conniving and as devious and as spiteful and just a horrible human being all around. That was Professor Umbridge in Harry Potter. Just awful. And Gretchen Whitmer is Professor Umbridge, in my opinion. So now that we have reached a so-called, but it is in cases, a second wave of coronavirus throughout the country, and now in the state of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer has enacted a new lockdown order amid surging cases. Indoor gatherings will be limited to 10 people. Outdoor gatherings are limited to 25 people. This is beginning November 18th, and the executive order will remain into effect until December 9th. On the Michigan.gov website, the executive order states, under this order, indoor residential gatherings are limited to 2 households at any one time. However, MDHHS strongly urges families to pick a single other household to interact with over the next 3 weeks. The order is aimed at limiting residential and non-residential gatherings where COVID-19 spreads rapidly. Bars and restaurants will be open for outdoor dining, carry-out, and delivery only. Gyms will remain open for individual exercise with strict safety measures. Casinos, movie theaters, and group exercise classes will be closed. Professional and college sports meeting extraordinary standards for risk mitigation may continue without spectators. However, all other organized sports must stop. Colleges and high schools may proceed with remote learning but must end in-person classes. So if you're in the state of Michigan, my apologies that you have a terrible governor and now you're heading back into another lockdown. Also, my apologies to all of the parents out there or caregivers that take care of children that now are going to be back out of school and you need to figure things out if you are even back to work. And I apologize to all those small businesses that were just now making their way back from the original lockdown catastrophe and now you're forced to shut down again, which probably means the end of your business, which is just horrible. One thing I don't understand, though, is why are some sports canceled and other sports aren't? There was a study recently that said there were 0 documented cases of coronavirus that were transmitted or picked up during a live sporting event. If that's the case, then I don't understand why some sports are going to be allowed to play and other sports aren't. What if you're not in a contact sport or not in a school sport, but you play flag football for your local community? You can't play now, but the people that play for the high school team can? I don't think that's fair. Do you? And after all of this time of being shut down, right around Thanksgiving and Christmas, right when people are going to be coming together, two of the biggest family-oriented holidays in the entire country, now we're going to do another lockdown right as people are starting to gain hope that they are going to be able to reunite with family members that they haven't seen in months and months and months. So Gretchen Whitmer, just another example of horrible governance in the state of Michigan. And I hope you guys make it through this lockdown because, like I said, we are 246 days into 15 days to slow the spread. We are now on to the second lockdown in Michigan, and I really hope this thing ends soon because the residents of these states deserve a hell of a lot better than they're getting. Move on next to the state of Washington and their awful Governor Jay Inslee. From Jason Branch, KTTH Radio in Seattle. He covers everything that's going on in the Seattle area, and when these measures were put into place, he is the person that you want to go to if you're looking for anything in the Seattle or Washington area. He said on the 14th of November, as early as tomorrow, Governor Inslee may announce new COVID mandates, and this is information I'm getting from Jason Rantz's Twitter at Jason Rantz, RANTZ. Religious services are limited to 25% occupancy or no more than 200 people, whichever is fewer. No choir, band, or ensemble performances, but soloists permitted. No congregational singing, face coverings required at all times. That is unconstitutional, and you're not allowed to do that because that is your place of worship, and they cannot tell you how to worship. He also encouraged families to cancel Thanksgiving and asked you to immediately self-quarantine for 14 days if you wanted to visit family. So he wants you to go to Thanksgiving and then after Thanksgiving quarantine for 14 days. Unbelievable. Also, just need to note here, the Washington mandates have been announced and the survival rate of COVID is 98% as of November 15th. So they're taking all of these new measures and saying that indoor social gatherings prohibited with people outside your household unless you quarantine for 14 days prior or 7-day quarantine and a negative COVID-19 test. This is all just lunacy. They want you to do all of these things just to go to your family's house to celebrate a holiday. I mean, if you're not taking any of these now mandated measures, then I don't know what you've been doing for the last 7 or 8 months. Jason Rantz did say that because of what's been going on, at least 40 restaurants and bars have permanently closed in Seattle in the last few months. Many won't survive a second shutdown, and there are no specifics from Governor Inslee on how they'll be saved. Data in Washington shows they weren't responsible for significant spread in this recent surge. But we are going to shut down the restaurants and bars anyways. This is unbelievable. Governor Inslee was asked at a press conference why he's targeting businesses like restaurants when they're not responsible for COVID cases. In Washington, it's less than 1%. He says he doesn't believe that statistic. Now, this is the party that's saying believe in science, believe in data, follow the data. They're obviously not following the data and not following the science. Inslee said, so shut down your restaurants for in-person dining and ban you from having more than 5 people at outside gatherings, but he will allow Seattle Seahawks games to continue because they have good protocols in place. But so too do restaurants and grocery stores. And again, this is in the state of Washington where the death rate has just decreased to 1.9%. So this is just a prime example of the new hysteria over the number of cases. When this thing was at its peak, we were all freaking out over the number of deaths. How many deaths were there today? How many deaths were there yesterday, tomorrow? Those are the things that we looked at. We didn't say, okay, how many cases and how many deaths? It was how many deaths. Now that we've gotten past this huge wave of deaths in our country, now we're going through a second wave of cases, not deaths. They're not the equivalent, and we have to stop treating them like it. So the state of Washington decreases their death rate to 1.9%. All of these new measures go into place. Unbelievable. Governor Inslee, just another one up there on the list of terrible governors in the United States. Need to give a quick shout out to the sponsor for this episode, Blazed Resin, a handmade resin art company. They customize and stash boxes, ashtrays, trays, custom wine racks, and coasters that'll match whatever you'd like to pair them with. Every product is handmade and prices are extremely reasonable. Place an order right now. You have free shipping on orders over $60. And if you use the promo code BLAZED10, that's BLAZED10, you get $10 off. Check them out on Instagram at Blazed Resin or blazedresin.com. That's BLAZEDRESIN. BLAZERIN.com. Blaze Resin, handmade resin art company. And now, let's get back to the show. Now I'm going to jump into Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, who has set new restrictions in Washington, D.C. in the District of Columbia. She has now been added to the list of hypocritical public officials who think that the rules apply to us, but not them. On November 2nd, Washington, D.C. Health, they released updated list of high-risk states. This is from mayor.dc.gov. Anyone coming into Washington, D.C. from a high-risk state within the prior 14 days who is traveling for non-essential activities will be required to self-quarantine for 14 days from their arrival in the district. Individuals traveling from high-risk states after essential travel or arriving in the district for essential travel are required to self-monitor for symptoms of COVID-19 for 14 days, and if they show signs or experience symptoms of COVID-19, they are to self-quarantine and seek medical advice or testing. The list includes high 30s, low 40s number of states, and they actually added to this list California, New Jersey, and Oregon when they put out this new order. And Muriel Bowser, the D.C. mayor, if I'm pronouncing her first name incorrectly, that is an apology to her, Muriel Bowser, she added the state of Delaware to the list. Well, what happened was after she tightened the lockdown, this is from thefederalist.com and author Christopher Jacobs, talk about the D.C. swamp. Mere days after issuing a revised order regarding quarantines after travel to coronavirus hotspots, the mayor of the nation's capital openly ignored the rules she established. While many will decry Washington Mayor Muriel Bowser for violating the travel restrictions, they shouldn't feel surprised by her double standards. On Monday afternoon, a reporter from NBC's Washington affiliate noted that Bowser and her staff attended former Vice President Joe Biden's political rally on Saturday. Through her chief of staff, Bowser claimed the trip constituted essential travel, which therefore exempted her and her staff from her own quarantine order. The mayor and her staff reportedly met with Simone Sanders, an advisor from the Biden campaign. Bowser is not the only Democrat politician to ignore lockdown rules she imposes. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi famously got her hair done while hairdressers in her district are banned from operating. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot also got her hair done at a salon despite having banned salons from operating, justifying it by saying she needed to look good on TV to do her job. Quote, from Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, "I'm the public face of this city, I'm on national media, and I'm out in the public eye." So she's essential and you're not. And of course, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo cannot be excluded from any list of terrible governors or mayors. He imposed mask mandates but went out on the town without wearing a mask himself. The husband of Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer ignored her shutdown orders to launch a boat on Memorial Day weekend. And there are others, including Gavin Newsom, which I am going to get to shortly. So Muriel Bowser, she tightens the lockdown, adds lists to the states of hotspots that you need to self-quarantine for. She goes to one of those hotspots and she says that she is exempt because her going to a party for Joe Biden was essential. Getting tired of the hypocrisy? It's not so much the hypocrisy of the whole situation, it's the fact that they're putting these restrictions and mandates into place, and the fact that they're not following them themselves. It shows that even they think the restrictions and the mandates are ridiculous, and the notion that people can't be together for dinners or for celebrations of any type, it is incredibly frustrating to see them say it's too dangerous to be in a restaurant, and then at night they are seen in a restaurant themselves with over a dozen people. If they're going to preach social distancing, if they're going to preach masks, if they're going to preach you can't go out to a restaurant, they need to start practicing what they're preaching, because it's unbelievable that we sit back, watch them time after time after time after time put in these new lockdowns, put in these new mandates, put in these new restrictions, and then they go and violate themselves, and then their excuse is, well, I'm essential. Well, I want to get into the essential thing in a little bit, because imagine being told that someone else is more essential than you, that your job is not essential, that paying your bills is not essential. How degrading must that be? And these public officials doing all of this stuff time after time after time? How do the people of those states and the constituents of these people, how do they put up with that and then take everything that the mayor and the governors say at face value when they are not practicing what they're preaching to us on a daily basis? Right on to Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who was just mentioned earlier. She has put new restrictions into place in Chicago before Thanksgiving. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, this is from apnews.com. She urged residents in the nation's third largest city to restrict social gatherings to 10 people, part of a renewed push announced Thursday to fight a COVID-19 surge. Lightfoot implored Chicagoans to, quote, cancel the normal Thanksgiving plans, saying the skyrocketing cases show no signs of slowing and urgent steps were needed immediately. She stopped short of making the limitations mandatory, calling them a progressive step. Quote, I hope we don't have to go any further than this. The limitations on gatherings, which takes effect Monday for 30 days, were announced with a fresh stay-at-home advisory urging residents to venture out only for essential things like going to work or grocery shopping. Chicago already bars indoor dining under state rules announced last month. So in Chicago, we got Lori Lightfoot, who has told you that you should not have Thanksgiving with your family. It's not mandatory, but that's what they are saying. And she's out there, and she actually got her hair cut, just like I previously mentioned, saying that she was the face of the city, so, it needed to be done. Also, she attended a rally in Chicago celebrating Joe Biden's projected win in the presidency. After ordering a lockdown for her city, Democratic Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot on Friday defended her attendance at a mass celebration for President-elect Joe Biden, saying people, quote, need to have a relief. She continues, quote, there are times when we actually do need to have relief and come together, and I felt like that was one of those times. Noting in a video that people were wearing masks at the event. That crowd was gathered whether I was there or not, but this has been a super hard year on everyone. Everyone feels traumatized, they feel threatened for their safety, and they don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. Lightfoot stated in this interview on MSNBC, she stated the biggest risk that we're seeing in our city is in these private spaces and gatherings, such as a Thanksgiving dinner gathering. Unbelievable. I know I use that term a whole lot, but unbelievable. Tells you how you can handle your Thanksgiving. Tells you how many people you can have in your house. Tells you that she's allowed to get a haircut and you're not. And she tells you that coronavirus, those cases are surging because of indoor gatherings, such as restaurants and such as Thanksgiving dinner. But a mass celebration in the streets of Chicago where she attended had a bullhorn out talking to the crowd with no mask on. That's a sense of relief that Chicagoans needed. Get the F out of here, Lori Lightfoot, you friggin' hypocrite. Moving right on to the state of California and awful Governor Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom, who has some of the strictest lockdown policies in the entire nation in the state of California. Some people have not been out of their homes. They've been on lockdown since March. There's been no let up. There has been power outages, fires. It's been a hell of a year for California. But luckily, they have a great governor in Gavin Newsom. He reportedly attended a dinner party that went against California's coronavirus advice. From dailycaller.com, an estimated 12 people from multiple households were at attendance at the gathering at the French Laundry in Napa Valley to celebrate the birthday of Newsom's friend and political advisor Jason Kinney. Governor Gavin Newsom attended a birthday for one of his political advisors last week, the type of gathering his administration has discouraged during the coronavirus pandemic. Current California social distancing guidelines specify that gatherings pose a high risk for COVID-19. Gavin Newsom, when confronted with this, he came out with a stupid, long statement with his Ken doll-looking face and hair, and he said, we're all human, we fall short sometimes. Well, Governor, you're supposed to set the example for everyone, and if you're out at a restaurant which reportedly has the cheapest plate in California at like $400, he's allowed to go out to celebrate a birthday, but you should stay home for Thanksgiving. You should not see your family for Thanksgiving. Now, from the Daily Wire, government officials consider curfew for America's most populous county after weekend COVID-19 spike. Elected leaders and public health officials are considering instituting a curfew and implementing other restrictions to help slow the spread of coronavirus transmission they say surged in Los Angeles County over the weekend, which is amazing because everyone's on lockdown. So I don't even understand what is going on in the state of California. There's been no relief out there. They have been on lockdown. They have not been allowed to go back to work. They're allowed out only for certain things, and if you're out for a walk, they expect you to wear a mask. Now they're telling you don't have Thanksgiving. There may be a curfew, but just know that the governor, Gavin Newsom, he'll be at a birthday party for his friend. Gavin Newsom, running California straight into the ground. Now we'll get into the worst governor in the entire union, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Where can I begin with Andrew Cuomo? The man who has the highest death rate in the entire United States. The man who sent sick COVID patients back into nursing homes by executive order and then denied it, and then denied all investigative materials when people wanted to look into these allegations, which were proven with an executive order with his signature on it on his website. So Chris Cuomo, who has been out there actually pushing a book with how good he did in coronavirus when there are over 35,000 deaths in his state. His state was literally under a catastrophe, code red. President Trump rolled out a ship to help with the USS Comfort, to help with the recovery of New York. Not one patient was seen on that ship with COVID. They turned the Javits Center into a hospital. And guess what? Early in the pandemic, Andrew Cuomo was praising the government, praising the administration, praising President Trump for how much he helped with ventilators, with USS Comfort, with the Javits Center, with all of the help that they provided to New York. All he did was be out there and say that the administration is helping. Once the cases and the deaths started going down in New York, this mother effer started pushing a book about how great he did in COVID. He was out there pushing his book. He was out there pushing his success with a picture of a curve going all the way up to a peak and all the way back down. Those represented the death numbers. Those represented dead people. He made a picture of dead people to represent this is the curve that we need to go on and how it ends. Hey, where's the second half of that one? It went up, it went down, you flattened it, quote unquote, air quotes, you flattened it. Where's the second one going right up, Mr. Cuomo? Now Governor Cuomo has added new restrictions to the city of New York while people are basically still out of work. So Governor Cuomo has said new restrictions in an effort to slow the spread of coronavirus will go into effect Friday. Cuomo said the new infections are primarily coming from people attending private gatherings in bars, house parties, and restaurants. He did, however, acknowledge the strain restrictions could place on businesses within the state. Yeah, no SHIT, bro. You're ruining small businesses. You're ruining self-employed people. You're ruining people that have to take time off work if their kids are lucky enough to be in school. So he's putting out these new restrictions. Any establishment with a state liquor license, including bars and restaurants, must close at 10 p.m. because we do know that the coronavirus at 10 p.m., that's when it really comes out and starts to play, is after 10 p.m. Gyms must also close at 10 p.m. These new statewide rules will take effect on Friday at 10 p.m. That was a quote from Andrew Cuomo in an article from CBS News. New cases are also trending upward in New York State with over 18,400 confirmed cases last week and a testing positivity rate of 2.24% according to Johns Hopkins University. Those numbers are still much lower than when New York was considered America's epicenter for the virus in the spring. Also, Chris Cuomo was recently just out getting his hair cut in Manhattan with no mask on. These people are such idiots if they think they're going to put these new restrictions into place, and then when they go out in public, no one's going to be watching them and seeing what they're doing. And Chris Cuomo, well, had to get that haircut, no mask on. Mayor de Blasio of New York City was out there celebrating in the streets when Joe Biden was projected as the winner. Celebrating in the streets, gatherings, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in the streets of New York. De Blasio was there. The mayor of New York City. He was there. And when he was asked about it, de Blasio gave some, vanilla sense of relief type, Lori Lightfoot statement. People needed this. This is the time to come together and celebrate and all of this. What about the coronavirus? What about the coronavirus? Why is it okay to go out sometimes but not all the time? Why is it okay to go out until 10 p.m. but not after 10 p.m.? Why is it okay for some businesses to be called essential and other businesses to not be called essential? You guys are absolute hypocrites. You're out there closing down bars, closing down parks, closing down schools. You're telling people to wear masks outside. You're not wearing a damn mask to get your hair cut. Governor Cuomo, your brother Chris Cuomo, the anchor on CNN, He keeps getting caught in his apartment building without a mask, and the people in the apartment building keep issuing him citations and warnings that he's going to be fined if he doesn't wear a mask. So Chris Cuomo's on CNN during the day lecturing you about how it's patriotic and how you need to wear a mask and it's saving lives, while he's out there not even wearing a mask, ignoring citations and warnings from his own apartment building that he's not abiding by the rules. These people really think that they live on a different level than us. They really, really, really do think that they live with different sets of rules. And it's unbelievable. And then Governor Cuomo, we're going to top this off with just a woozy. Now, this is Governor Cuomo who's, listen to the science, listen to the data. According to Andrew Cuomo, COVID weakened our immune system, and because of that, we're being attacked by multiple viruses at the same time. Are you ready for the viruses that we're battling? We're battling the viruses because of a weakened immune system from COVID. Racism, sexism, discrimination, injustice, division, distrust, abuse of power, and hatred. What in the world? According to Andrew Cuomo, COVID weakened our immune system, and because of that, we're being attacked by multiple viruses at the same time. Racism, sexism, discrimination, injustice, division, distrust, abuse of power, and hatred. You guys still taking these people seriously? You guys really hanging on every one of these guys' words? A virus so deadly you need a test to know if you have it? A virus so deadly that it affects certain people in one political party but not the other? A virus so deadly that it comes out only during certain hours of the day and only in certain establishments, and only some people have to wear masks? And now because of that, viruses that we're battling are discrimination and racism and sexism? What in the world are you talking about? It's embarrassing to be a native New Yorker and to be from New York and see what de Blasio and see what Cuomo have done to that state and that city. It's embarrassing. It's turned into a heaping pile of trash, and it pains me to say that because I love New York. But we've reached a point now where New York is on the verge of being unrecognizable. It already is. There are still stores boarded up in Manhattan. There are still businesses closed. And they're furthering the restrictions. It bothers me, and I am fortunate and I'm grateful that I live in a state down here with Doug Ducey as the governor, who says that we are responsible adults and that we're responsible enough to make our own decisions. And I'm glad that he's trusting us to follow the mandates, follow the not mandatory mandates, but the recommendations, and to be responsible adults. And we're doing well here in Arizona. People say that we're, going through this huge wave and all that. We're going through a little bit of a wave of cases, but the people that it's affecting is not even close to what it was affecting. On a day, I believe I mentioned this earlier, on a day last week, November 12th, people over 65 accounted for only 11% of positive cases in Arizona. Out of those 11%, 76% of the deaths were from that same age group. So if you're in a higher risk and, you're up there in age, or you may have, a comorbidity or high blood pressure or asthma, whatever it may be, it's affecting older people. We need to learn how to live with this. So these people in states that have these governors and in these cities that have these mayors that are controlling their lives, my thoughts are with you, man. Best advice I have, get the heck out. Gretchen Whitmer, Jay Inslee, Muriel Bowser, Lori Lightfoot, Gavin Newsom, Andrew Cuomo. Worst governors in the union. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of the Fox Experience. Continued COVID ridiculousness, new restrictions, and awful governors and mayors around the country. Just a quick correction. In the episode, I did say that Chris Cuomo, the anchor on CNN, was the one getting his haircut. It was really Andrew Cuomo, the governor. Just wanted to clarify that because I did mix that up, I believe, in that part of the episode. But again, thanks so much for tuning in. Rate, subscribe, review, all of that good stuff. And check us out on Twitter at The Fox Experience. And again, wherever you get your podcasts, find The Fox Experience, subscribe, rate, and throw us a review. Really helps spread the word on the podcast. I really appreciate everyone's support. Thank you again for listening, and I'm out of here.